Recording in progress. Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaura Hari Bo. One more. One for Gaur, one for Nityananda. Nitai Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaur Hari Bo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivar Bhagavacharya Asatara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Hero Bhav Mahamahotsavatiti Ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai, Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Thakur Srila Gaur Kishoras Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Om Vishnupad Sri Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai, Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Jai Sabarikar Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Sundar Ju Ki Jai, Sri Krishna Balaram Ju Ki Jai, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness Ki Jai, Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Govina Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Shri Gupta Govardhan Ki Jai, Ganga Devi Jumana Devi Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Om Vishnupad Vishvavarenya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Tirubha Mahamahotsavatiti Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Brinda Ki Jai, Sannyasi Brinda Ki Jai, Seva Brinda Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Brinda Ki Jai, Nitai Go Premanande.
Jai.
So I hear the voice of our Bhakti, Srila Bhakti Ranjan Madhusudan Maharaj. He Jai. And I was going to say, Maharaj, when I saw you, I got the inspiration, we should begin this kirtan. Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And we're reminded, Guru Maharaj, one of the things Guru Maharaj so much appreciated about Srila Swami Maharaja Prabhupada was that his purity and simplicity, that this is how he began the Krishna consciousness movement. Just as we hear after the inaugural Sankirtan of Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit and Navadip, with, Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. So Srila Prabhupada, when he went to America, he would go to this Tompkins Square Park and chant Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, and then Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And he once said in this regard that his chanting was not based upon getting a particular response. Of course, that's why he's on this mission. But he said, basically, and I'm paraphrasing someone, he's saying, this is what I do. It's not that if there's an audience there, I do this, and if there's no audience, I don't. This is what I do. And now I'm sharing that or extending that with others and inviting them to participate. And when I asked Srila Guru Maharaj, thinking of my own initial connection, but of so many others, I was thinking like, so did he extend this capacity to appreciate these things to us, or how should we understand that? And he quoted this famous verse, that Sat Sangha, no, not Prapyate Pumbi Purva Sangchitai. Forget the first line. Sat Sangha Prapyate Pumbi something Sarva Purva Sangchitai. He's saying that the Sukriti is there previously, and the way he put it was, he said, and that brought you floating into the zone of Srila Swami Maharaja Prabhupada, where you could accept what he's giving. So that's a very different way of seeing this. So when you see everyone assembled around there, we can understand it in terms of a level of the accumulation of Sukriti, and some are resonating at that moment, some later, because sometimes some unknowingly, like Agyata Sukriti, they're there, and then you could interview devotees and find out they were at some kirtan previously, and maybe at that time it didn't awaken an overwhelming appreciation, but it sprinkled some nectarine nourishing substance upon them, to which it would awaken later. So, and his movement was with kol and kartals, right? That means, mridanga and kartals. Because Guru Maharaj mentioned, this is the eternal paraphernalia of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's Prabhupada. So, but if we trace this back, the steps that led him to enter America at this particular time, we will see that we hear in the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, at one point he says, Prithvi te ache jata nagaradigram sarbatra prachar hoibe moranam, that this Krishna Nam Sankirtan will be heard all over the world, in every village and town, and even beyond this world, other planets throughout the universe. And devotees interpret that variously, right? Because Mahaprabhu said that circa 500 years ago, and then they would hear, if you joined in the Gaudiya Math, they would hear from Saraswati Thakur about the pastimes of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And there were some members who participated in some of those pastimes of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Guru Maharaj knew one of them, and he was at a lecture, or the lecture, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, soon in the world, they will come from all different countries all over the world and take the banner of Mahaprabhu, and they will join together in Nam Sankirtan. And he gave some very inspiring talk like this, even saying, there will only be one religion in the future, Mahaprabhu's Krishna conception, and all the intelligentsia will embrace this. And if we say, well, I know some intelligent people who are not embracing. What is that? Then we say, well, the qualifying word is Sukritivan or Sumedasa, which Guru Maharaj translates as refined theistic intellect. Right? Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yagye Sankirtana Pray. The Sankirtan Yagya, that's the sacrifice in this age, as we heard. Kriteya Dhyatam Vishnum Dwarpare Pari Tretayam Yajato Makai Dwarpare Paricharjayam Kalo Tad Hari Hari Sankirtana. Right? Kalo Tad Hari San. Yeah. Hari Kirtana. Sankirtan, Kirtan, Sankirtan. So, but then it's a Yajanti hi Sumedasa. Those who are refined theistic intellect, if they take that tendency, which we see expressed in varieties of theistic systems and levels of depth and magnitude, if it becomes refined and more precise and more accurate, it must lead to Krishna conception. And to get Krishna conception proper, that means from the lotus feet of Guru and Gauranga. Yata yata Gaura Padara Vinde, Vinde ta Bhaktim Krita Punyarasi, Tata Tatot Sarpati Hridya Kasmat, Radha Padamboja Sudamburasi. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making this prediction, and Srila Saraswati Thakur is infusing this, his disciples, with this inspiration. So Srila Prabhupada would say, he'd say, I didn't meet with my Guru Maharaj more than 10 times. Think about that. And of those 10, some of them may have been lectures. And so a few meetings. Like when we hear that, Lava Matra Sadhu Sange Sarva Siddhi Hoy, is it hyperbole or is it reality? A moment's association with a particular level of, when we say sadhu, that we could take as a generic term, but when we're saying, the Sajjan Toshini, Satjan, that level means whom Radha and Krishna considered to be their own. If that's sort of the devotee of the highest order descends into this plane and you get their association, I mean, you can say, really, truly, Lava Matra Sadhu Sange Sarva Siddhi Hoy. And that is none other than Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And so he would say, in general, to his disciples, like, you're all educated young men. They were not street urchins, but highly educated, going to good schools. In some instances, Sanskritians, or the sanskar of having a connection with this sort of spiritual culture. And he'd say, you should take the Mahaprabhu's teachings to the Western countries, particularly the English-speaking countries. And to what degree was he saying this? We know Swami Maharaja Prabhupada, he says, even the Guru Maharaj said, do you remember when Prabhupada told me that? And Guru Maharaj said, well, I don't know specifically, because he is saying that frequently and pushing his disciples so much so that Guru Maharaj said there was one man who was his service was cultivation, which means farming. right? And they saw he's studying English, right? And the devotees were a little charmed by that. And they said, Prabhu, why are you studying? He was not one of those highly educated. And he said, well, he said, Prabhupada said about preaching in America. He said, maybe one day I will be plowing fields in America. So I need to be prepared for that moment. So it gives us some insight to the level of infusion of Saraswati Thakur into his disciples, which Srila Guru Maharaj beautifully encapsulates in one of his numerous pranams to Srila Saraswati Thakur that ends in the line, Bilasatu Hridi Nityam Bhakti Siddhanta Vani. May the divine voice, instruction, desire, inspiration of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur play upon our hearts eternally. So it's often thought by those who hear about the history of Prabhupada's life, like that it all started in 1965 when he came to America. But really, his preaching Krishna consciousness his entire life. Even in his childhood, he's trying to engage others and Jagannath Rath Yatra and such things. And since hearing the order and the words of Srila Saraswati Thakur, he's always, that's playing upon his heart, as Guru Maharaj says, and he's thinking how to realize that. So, though he was initiated, met in 22, initiated in 33, and 1944, he starts the publication of the Back to Godhead magazine. And we know by 47, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami, he's, and Guru Maharaj's word, a young, brisky boy, very much loved by Swami Maharaj, staying in Calcutta with him, getting trained in Gita and other things from him, and distributing Back to Godhead magazine. You know, on the streets of Calcutta and to the businessmen of Calcutta, he's got his Back to Godhead magazine and taking to them. So that shows even then he's trying. And Guru Maharaj said sometimes he would come to him and say, Nehru and Gandhi, you know, are like 5 blocks away. Let's go. Like, you know, what do you call it when you break into a meeting? You know, let's crash that meeting and tell them they have to begin preaching Mahaprabhu's creed to everyone, you know. So this type of bold, say, preaching spirit, right? And he had some idea that if he was successful in business, that he would use the profits to promote Krishna consciousness. And in the first meeting, or not the first meeting, but the meeting at the opening of the Chandradoya Mandir in Mayapur of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to be the world headquarters, the inauguration when he invites Srila Guru Maharaj and Srila Gurudev to that. They're sharing their history. And when Prabhupada's telling about formerly being a businessman and pharmacist and inventor, he invented different things, but then it all was unsuccessful. He laughs and quotes this famous verse in the Bhagavatam, Yasyaham anugranami harishe tadanam shanai. When Parikshit Maharaj said, it's a little confusing when you observe the Shiva's devotees and Vishnu's devotees. Why? Because Vishnu has Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, massaging his lotus feet, and his devotees are poor Brahmins. And he said, and Mahadev Shiva, who doesn't have a care in the world, body covered in ashes, has no, observable possessions, sitting underneath, an 800-kilometer diameter banyan tree, his devotees are enriched with so many opulences. So this is perplexing. And the answer comes that having material opulences is not truly a blessing, may distract one from genuine spiritual pursuit. When some would think that the ideal time to be born would be Satya Yuga, when the people are all favorably disposed towards spiritual culture and enriched with Vedic knowledge, and that the Kali Yuga is the most unfortunate time to be born. Guru Maharaj said, no, just the opposite. Said because in the Satya Yuga, that general situation is there, but the outcome may be generic as well. Whereas, and what is prescribed, since their condition is not extreme, some gradual, I'd say, a prescription is given to them to improve. Said, whereas in the Kali Yuga, the condition is so extreme that the ultimate medicine is given. Like, if this doesn't work, nothing works. So Nam Sankirtan, we're giving the holy name of Krishna. Who's giving it? Krishna. Namo Mahavananaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gorta Seno. Why do I say that? Because we're told, and the gods who are in the heavenly planets, they're not saying, oh, if we could only take birth in the Satya Yuga, no such thing. They're saying, if we could take birth in the Kali Yuga, then we could take advantage of this once in a day of Brahma offering that's coming by the grace of the golden avatar, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Prabhupada quoting this verse saying, Yasyaham anugranam, if he favors you, really, he'll take everything away from you, because that's those things that are keeping you from fully dedicating yourself, and the outcome of dedication is becoming enriched with prem, das kori beton mori deho premadan. But when Prabhupada's telling us, he's laughing, but he may not have been laughing at the time when those things happen. So gradually, the family life falls apart, the business falls apart, everything. And his dear sister, Bhavatarini Didi, affectionately known to the devotees as Pishima, she came and told me, she said, Prabhu, she's also Harinam Saraswati Thakur, mantram from Goswami Maharaja. She said, Prabhu, you are meant for preaching. Forget all this. We'll take care of whatever remains of the family life. We'll take care of that. And in one of his postcards from Vrindavan, he wrote, now that I am penniless, the only thing that remains of my family life is a long list of names. He was not getting so many likes on Facebook anymore. And he wrote another one to Guru Maharaj saying, I love it. He says, I am totally disgusted with human civilization. The animals appear to be more friendly to me. That shows you the level of his desperation. I heard Gurudev said this once in California, and some people were, he said, Swami Maharaja was a desperate man. He was saying it as a compliment, like the way the Braja Gopis are desperate. This sort of divine, there's except no substitute. There's only one focus and one way to go. So he is there, we say by around 55, Vanaprastha, then going to sannyas, taking up residence, Anam, Bedanam, residency at the Radha Damodar temple of Srila Jiva Goswami, where there's the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami and his Bhajan Kutir. samadhis of Jiva and Krishnadas, others as well. Deities of Jiva Goswami and Krishnadas Kaviraj. Oh, there is Srila Keshava Maharaj. Srila Bhakti Pragyan Kesava Maharaj. On the left side is Bhaktivedanta Muni, right? Bhaktivedanta Swami. And you see that picture? That's the kind of picture that's on Prabhupada's passport. Like from here, you know, no kurta even, this big tilak, looking like this. I saw it once in an Elmira at ISKCON Press. And interestingly, in the opposite page, it says like family member, you know, it says father's name, and it says, written in his name, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Like, that's my father's name. So this kind of, you can say, desperation leads him to go deeper and deeper into the divine voice, instruction, order of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, playing upon his heart, Vilasatu Hridinityam Bhakti Siddhanta Vani. You're a young, educated man. Spread this Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking countries. So Prabhupada's there with his little typewriter and putting in the papers. We've told the other side, he can't even buy fresh paper. It's all already been typed on. That's the paper he can afford. In India, you can actually go buy that paper that's already been typed on, right? That's what he feeds into his typewriter. What he's typing, the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, science of devotion becomes nectar devotion, Chaitanya Charitamritam, Narada Pancharatra, light of the Bhagavat. You think, preaching before, he gets an invitation to go to Japan. Think about that, before going to America. And what does he think? He's thinking of the so-called Oriental mind. What will be, he knows maybe he should make some adjustment or curate the substance he's going to deliver them. So what does he do? He selects this one chapter in the 10th canto. What is the name of it in the autumn season? Is the title in his Krishna book and perhaps in the Bhagavatam as well. And what is it about? It talks of it's speaking in poetic language and metaphorically about clouds in the sky, and then lightning strikes them, and then the rain comes down and it's nourishing the grains, and then it's interpretive. But that imagery he thought would be more appealing to the Japanese mind, the Oriental mind, if you want to say. So he publishes this, or he makes a manuscript called Light of the Bhagavat that he will take with him to Japan to attend these meetings. So further indication that he's always trying to preach, right? When festivals come at Radha Damodar, there's, that was published by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He hired an artist, and I believe Hong Kong, a famous artist, to do a series of paintings like that. So when it's Janmashtami, Govardhan Puja, he's sending out invitations, inviting people to come and attend his festival there at the Radha Damodar temple. So, but all the time with this single-minded focus, right, that he attributes to reading the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur on the Bhagavad Gita sloka, famous sloka, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Ekeha Kurunandana, which Prabhupada translated as the resolute determination to execute, pursue, and execute Krishna consciousness. And he's saying, in reading that, he had this epiphany that the life of the disciple should be, wholly given over to the order of Guru. If this is the order of Guru, then you give your, body, mind, word, kai, manobhaka, everything to, in an attempt to fulfill that order. Right? Srila Guru Maharaj would sometimes say that as rare as it is to find a genuine guru in this world, it's equally, if not more rare, to find the perfect disciple. And what is the mood of the perfect disciple? Guru Maharaj said, I found this in 5th class. Like, whether he's in school, reading the 5th, whatever it is, it's Veda. Right? So he remembers from his 5th class, this verse that said, one word from the Guru is so valuable that if you could offer the world as pranami, it would be insufficient. The world and all the resources in it, if you could offer that and to express your gratitude to receiving one word from Guru, it would be insufficient. And that reminded me of when Gurudev said, one word from Guru Maharaj is sufficient to make us his slaves forever. See the thread here. And by the way, someone said to me when I was quoting this one, they said, oh, Maharaj, what is that word? For the record, Om. Everything is in Om, and by extension. So if you want to go that route, Om. Any argument? But when Gurudev said it, I think it had increased meaning, but when he said it that way, one word from Guru Maharaj is sufficient to make us his slaves forever. Srila Prabhupada Swami Maharaj had that type of Guru Bhakti, the Srila Saraswati Thakur. Here's his order. Sometimes he would say, I only ask my Guru Maharaj one question. How can I serve you? What was the answer? Preach Krishna consciousness in English and English-speaking countries. That's the answer. So he's in Vrindavan doing that. And for those of us who have a little experience being there from a few days to a few weeks, few months time, and maybe beyond, maybe you would see him leave the Radha Damodar temple and go to that Loy Bazai market and buy some cauliflower, eggplant, some aloo, something like that, little bag, come back. So we don't, what do you say? Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vidye Hanabujoy. Do not say the Vaishnava externally, or in terms of what you think is observable objectively. That person who would see doing that, he's going to go back and continue with his Bhagavad translation and his aspiration to fulfill the order of his Guru Maharaj, the prediction of Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he never loses sight of that. Right? And he's sacrificing everything else in pursuance of this order. And we know, we hear that after so much pleading and with this lady, his name was Sumati Morarji, to book passage on the Scindia steamship line. That's the name of the company. Not even ocean, like the Scindia steamship line. Right? And why is this? This is, they have something like 6 or 8 rooms, and it's another type of, it's a, what do you call it? Shipping, commercial vessel. It's not an ocean liner. I mean, for you to understand. Huh? Cargo ship. So it's nothing for her to say yes. But later she said, I was afraid he won't survive. And then that'll be on me. That's why I'm delaying and making excuses. And that's what she thought. And she was not incorrect in her thinking. But finally, Krishna gives some inspiration in her heart to concede. So she gives Prabhupada the passage, and who's a meticulous record keeper. When you see it, you get this little book when you on the ship, and like, remember, it first goes from Calcutta to like some port in South India. right? It stops there. And you'll see in the comment like pies, 30 paisa cauliflower, 60 paisa postage. He has records of everything, of every rupee, every pie spent, right? Because when I saw that, I'm like looking through it, and of course, I'm searching for divine things, and I'm seeing these lists of marketing, postage, but the other things they do come in time. But remember, so going Calcutta to some port, I forget exactly where, but on the southern tip of India, but at a certain point, it's only ocean. And you can see some deepening of the mood. And that's when he's now just surrounded by water on what would be like a 30-day voyage. And he says, being so far away from Vrindavan, I'm feeling so much separation from Radha Damodar, Radha Madan Mohan, Hare Krishna, Radha Govinda, Radha. He starts naming, in addition to Radha Damodar, principal deities of Vrindavan. And he's saying, being so far from Vrindavan, I must depend exclusively upon their mercy. These sort of expressions coming from his heart. Then reading on a little bit more, and that's when he says, daily I am relishing the nectarine of Sri Chaitanya Lila, the source of my all vitality. And I thought, oh, like the conclusion of Madhya Lila, where Kaviraj Goswami says, if you don't, relish daily the nectarine of Chaitanya Lila, you will fall from your position. I'm giving the shortened version of what is there. Krishna Lila Amrita Sar Tar Shata Shata. He's saying what an opportunity is before you. Krishna Lila, which is inaccessible to the degree that, impossible, you could say. Kotishvapi Mahamune. Muktanam api Siddhanam Narayana Parayana. Out of 10 million liberated souls, one, Koti Mukta Durlabh Madhye Ek Krishna Bhakta, maybe. Right? Now we're talking, what is Gaur Lila? The magnanimous flooding distribution of Krishna Lila to everyone, qualified, unqualified. We already see the qualified is so rare. So we can say to the most unqualified. So he's saying, and it's so beautiful, Gaur Lila, it says like, we were talking about Sarovar, Kusum Sarovar, lake. It says it's like a lake full of lotus flowers and chakravaka birds, and saying, let your minds, these different pastimes of Mahaprabhu, they're like lotus flowers, and let the swan of your mind go deep into those lotus flowers and relish these pastimes. It's one of the most beautiful things, one of the most favorite sections of Srila Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, according to Guru Maharaj. Right? He'd always go, Govinda Maharaj liked this section very much. But following that and saying, so after all of this, if you don't do this, daily relish of the nectarine of Chaitanya Lila, here it is in a nutshell. Don't do that. He's saying you will fall down. You will become weak spiritually. And you'll become victims of, what he calls, the pitfall of false arguments and the whirlpool of unfortunate situations. So here he is, Prabhupada saying this is what I do. Back to that. Saying, this is what I do. It's not, when there's an audience, I do this. When there's no audience, I do this. When the devotees apologize for some program that apparently, other than the devotees, no one really came, one of those kind of programs. And we're told, Prabhupada said, no, Nard Muni was there, and he started naming all these divine personalities who attended. And it reminds us of Bhakti Vinod Thakur's walk in the sky and seeing and the subtle plane, seeing all these divine personalities. So he's feeling that, realizing that, and that's the impetus of his movement. That's why he's in this situation. He's put himself in an increasingly helpless, like hopeless, helpless, desperate condition where one would have to be exclusively dependent upon divine mercy, not on yourself and your own resources. And you would think that is enough. That should qualify as enough, right? But then what, you would turn the page and then you see like a gash from the pen. It's very, you can, I'm not a handwriting expert, but you can see compared to what was written, this is like, next one. And what do we know later? He has a heart attack, perhaps 2 heart attacks. Right? And then you think, Krishna, what is with Krishna? Isn't it enough what he'd done up to this point? Then we're told, the less we think that Krishna is cruel or insensitive, but there's this, when the maximum amount of pressure is put upon the heart, that from the heart of such a pure devotee, a type of prem manifest, yield, that is so unique and tasteful to Krishna that he sometimes ratchets up the extremity of the pressure of the situation. So it's like Krishna Lila. Those cowherd boys are dancing into the gaping jaws of Aghasura, saying, Krishna is here. What worry do we have? They're dancing on the way in. So you could say the jaws of death, right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his song said those cowherd boys, when they're drinking, they're like drinking the poison waters of the Jamuna from Kali. Krishna is here. What do we worry? So he has these heart attacks, and then you see, and him write, today the ship is plying smoothly, right? And we hear that captain's log. He's saying, I've never seen the ocean. It suddenly turned into a pond. So it's some miraculous situation. Now there's no waves. It's just pond water. So to not disturb Prabhupada. And that's when he says, today I cooked bati chachari, Bengali comfort food, little aloo in the bati, the bowl, mustard oil. And he said, now I'm feeling some strength and feeling better. And so, but leave it to Guru Maharaj to supply the analysis. And he says, he sees this as a zenith point. On the altar of self-sacrifice, he's saying he wholly emptied himself of any other desire than that of fulfilling the order of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So much so, he says, divine power had to come down to descend and work on his behalf. And Guru Maharaj identified that, and Gurudev put it in the prayer, Shaktavesha Rupini, as a Shaktavesha avatar, particularly of the extremes of mercy, necessity and the situation, Nityananda Prabhu. Then he makes it to Boston. That's where the ship lands, but he won't disembark till New York. So he's now technically there, right, but cannot disembark. So he composes 2 poems. I mean, it just gives us some insights, even for those who think they know something about Prabhupada, his disciples and others, like the sort of heart that at that time he's writing poetry. So we can understand at least that he's extremely inspired, and something very deep in his ecstatic emotional interior is blazing. And the two poems are very different, which also is revealing. One is called Markine Bhagavata Dharma, preaching Bhagavat Dharma in America, back to Vilasatu Riddhi Nityam Bhakti Siddhantavani, fulfilling his order. And some of his favorite verses appear there, you know, Nashta Prayesha Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Tada Rajastamo Bhava Kamalobha Dayase, Cheta Etaranabhidam Stitam Satve Prasidati. When he would say that, Stitam Satve Prasidati, it was like he was chewing on some kind of nectarine lozenge, you know, Pribhata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. And these are, and the first canto of the Bhagavatam. There he's deriving great relish, and he's quoting these verses, and that one in particular saying, the passion is overwhelmed by the modes of passion and ignorance. And when Sureshri Didi and Vrishakapi Prabhu were, he was the president of the Washington, D.C. temple, Prabhupada was there in 1966. And in honor of the day when he arrived in America, they're presenting him some cake and other things, and got to read these poems to Prabhupada, what he wrote. And when this one came, he's listening too. Right? And about the population being overwhelmed by passion and ignorance, Prabhupada, he thought this was really humorous, and he stopped and he said, how could I know? He said, I hadn't even got off the boat. Which gives you a hint of his sense of humor as well. He could see the humor in that, right? But, you know, Shastra Chaksu, seeing through the eyes of scripture, he already knows what the situation is. Kalo Nashta Drishamesha Puan Arko Dunoditaha. He's come with the light of the Bhagavatam in his trunks to illumine the Kali Yuga. So that's the one poem, and that's the one where he says, signs, you know, he said, so I'm considering the situation here. Kali Yuga, people are overwhelmed by the modes of passion and ignorance. It's the 1960s, they're in full swing. And he's saying, I can only think that you must have brought me here for some reason. Understatements. Right? Mahaprabhu's prediction, Bhaktivinoda's prediction, Saraswati Thakur's order. You must have brought me here for some reason. That so, if you want me to dance, then make me dance, oh Lord, make me dance. Right? I'll be your puppet. You're the puppeteer, make me dance as you please. And signed, the insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. That's the one poem. Then the other poem, Prayer to the Lotus Feet of Krishna, is written from his internal perspective. And there he's saying that he's talking about feeling separation from Krishna. And he's saying, today it reached such an intensity that I cried out to you. And he says that, and I'm longing for those days when we will be running and frolicking on the banks of the Jamuna and eating, having a picnic together. That he wrote. Right. And then he says, but then this is so supremely clever and utterly consistent with Gaudiya ontology, seeing Guru, the Ujjvala Rasa Acharya, Srimati Radharani, seeing Guru as her extension. So taking the order of Saraswati Thakur as ultimately the suggestion, the order of Srimati Radharani. And he says so beautifully and appealingly and perfectly to Krishna that it looks like you have everything. Right? You're Krishna. Everything comes from you. Everything belongs to you. If I look carefully, I can't see anything that you're in need of other than one thing. And that is the goodwill of Srimati Radharani. That I know you want. You have everything else. But that you might be craving or hankering. And I'm in a situation where her order has come down and descended to me, and I consider myself utterly unqualified and incapable to fulfill this order. But nonetheless, it has come to me. But I know you're the most capable of all. He's telling Krishna, like, but you're qualified. I'm not qualified, but you are so qualified. So if you will help me fulfill this order that comes from her, then just think of the good what's going to come to you as a result of that. So humbly, I'm pleading with you, help me to do this. So how clever, like, who does Arjuna have backing him? Krishna. Who does Prabhupada have backing him? Krishna. And more specific, the grace of, for these people, I think we need Nityananda. We need the special grace of Nityananda to deal with this section. So divine power came down and worked on his behalf. Right? He's saying, and what did he do? Flood the world with Krishna consciousness. Guru Maharaj was saying, what he has done is like an ocean. He said, we are so many ponds, but what he has done is like an ocean. He said, and when we think of him, what did he say? We are happy, we are glad, we are proud. And that was from the heart of Srila Guru Maharaj. So still, the drama of Krishna consciousness, as I've told, the uncertainty principle of operating within the parameters of Krishna consciousness. For 1 year, he's selling those books he brought in the trunk. He goes to bookstores and they buy a few. We had the good fortune of purchasing one. But he does some programs here and there, and it doesn't, and asked for the God brothers, like he shows them a building that would be a perfect temple in the upper 80s, like, and you can imagine, like Tirthamar's Bhakti Vilas Tirthamar gets a letter saying, showing the building, and he said, and it's only $80,000. So that's in 1960. That's kind of like saying, getting a letter saying, and it's only $8 million. So those God brothers, they're like, they're deflecting, defraying, and he realizes in time, it's not like he's going to get a lot of help from India, right? And after 1 year with relatively small success, distributing a few books here, a few programs here and there, he is contemplating returning to India, and also sickness. Again, Krishna ratcheting up the drama. He writes a letter to Srila Guru Maharaj saying, I'm thinking I should just go back and spend my final days in Vrindavan. It's like that close to not happening. Right? It's reason. He's saying, I did what I could. And now I'm in a poor health. I will go back. I have my room in Radha Damodar. I will go back there, spend my final days in Vrindavan. And Guru Maharaj quotes that famous line, Prabhu Datta Desh, saying, I think Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur has given you this place for your bhajan and your kirtan and your everything. So you stay in pursuance of the order of Srila Saraswati Thakur. And what does Swami Maharaja Prabhupada write back? He said, I take your order as Prabhupada's order on my head. Like to him, that was a decisive moment. Still, he's looking at the chart, what do they call it? The manifest, or like the ships, I don't know the right terms, but. And that's when someone who will become his disciple and editor in the future, Hayagriva Prabhu, Professor Howard Miller, sees him and says, and remember, Prabhupada had these like, those white shoes from Vrindavan with the little pointy, well, maybe not the curl, but the pointy tip. And you know, Achyutanandamar said, he looked like a genie, you know, from Goloka Vrindavan or something, like so extraordinary. And Hayagriva Prabhupada said, like, are you from India? That's what he said. And Prabhupada was saying, you know, Golo Kara Prema Dana Harinam. This Golo Kara, the Harinam descended from Goloka Vrindavan. Gurudev said once that, you know, at Krishna's, when so many gifts are given at the appearance of Krishna, he's saying, Nandamar, there's so much wealth here. Krishna is saying, who will distribute all this? That Swami Maharaj comes forward in his divine form, and then I will. So he, not just from India, he's descended from Goloka Vrindavan to distribute this divine substance. And from that point on, gradually the Krishna consciousness movement, he wrote a book called The Hare Krishna Explosion. It explodes throughout America, the English-speaking world, and ultimately his books are printed, and the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions are distributed on the Krishna consciousness world. The world is inundated with Krishna consciousness. And I like to conclude with this because I witnessed to see Srila Prabhupada's last visit in America, where, so remember, when he arrives, he has something like $14 and the trunks of Bhagavatam, some mridungas, kartals, puja paraphernalia, things like that. Then, you know, you can say 108 centers around the world. And as I've told before, and rightfully so, when devotees think of making a temple or something in their own country, they think like, oh, let's make it like a temple in Vrindavan or Navadvip. But when you'd ask him what his idea was, he said, I want a glass skyscraper that says ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, right? That's that rooftop in New York. That's the mezzanine floor of his glass skyscraper. So it's at that time, that's 1976. And he wants to celebrate the Rath Yatra, and the reporters come, and it's like to get the talking points. And so he's showing his skill and flattering the Americans, the American ego, the New Yorkers and everything. And he says, you know, America is the most important country in the world. And they're all, of course. In America, New York is the most important city. They're all New Yorkers. Oh, New York. Then he says, in New York City, Fifth Avenue is the most important street. Yeah, Fifth Avenue. And then they'd go, on that street, we are having our festival, right? So he just gave them the talking points, America, New York, Fifth Avenue. Like, lo and behold, miracle on miracles. We're celebrating the Jagannath Rath Yatra on Fifth Avenue, the most important street, arguably the most important street in the world. And lined up and down, it's closed, you understand? They've closed the most important street of the world for this. For the man who came with $14 in his pocket and a trunk full of Bhagavatams and kartals and mridanga. Right? So there's the 3 chariots, and as they call them, New York's finest, means all the policemen in their blue uniforms looking very nice, you know, up lining the streets to ensure that everything goes safely and all that. And Prabhupada sends Subhadra's cart. That was the cart he always rode on. and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of devotees doing Nam Sankirtan, and you see this beautiful parade, you know, and that's his childhood pastime, is the celebration of Rath Yatra. It's the central pastime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees. And it occurred to me, I was there as well, but many years later, I thought, like, as much as it was the Jagannath Rath Yatra, I realized Krishna was the word feeding, F-E-T-E, means honoring, having a celebration. Krishna was honoring the devotee. It was to the delight of Krishna that Prabhupada was, you know, understand, they're celebrating him. He's parading down. Guru Maharaj once said, if you take the Krishna consciousness, don't expect that they're in your hometown or wherever, they're going to have a parade in your honor. I say, did you hear what happened? She's dedicating herself to Krishna consciousness. Oh, how wonderful. We should all celebrate that. Rather, he said, like Prahlad, the world may turn against you. Right, Prabhupada. What's left? A list of names. Now I'm penniless. No one wants to have anything to deal with me. But when he concentrates himself exclusively on the order of Srila Saraswati Thakur, inconceivable level of resources come to him for that. Here's a person, if someone gave a pie, you know, out of 100 pies, a pie, it was counted and recorded. We've done that. That's of counting the change from the people at a program. Everything is accounted for and used in the service. So that Krishna, you know, Kir Chor Gopinath. Why is he Kir? He's celebrated because he stole Kir from Madhavendra Puri. This is like that. Krishna is celebrating his divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, by having this festival there. So, Jai Srila Prabhupada Tirubab Mahamahotsavatiti Ki Jai, Srila Bhakti Ranjan Madhusudan Maharaj, I know you are there. If you can say a few words, or more than a few.
Well, Maharaj, first of all, obeisances to your holiness and obeisances to all of the devotees here online and who will see, actually obeisances to all of the devotees. Maharaj, I can just say something briefly because we have disciples of Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada here with us. But Maharaj, I can simply say that myself and our generation, we are the evidence of Srila Prabhupada's distribution of mercy to the most fallen. And without meeting his devotees, except, you know, okay, we had seen them in the street and we must have heard Hare Krishna because they were going down the street chanting something. And I'm sure it was Hare Krishna, but from a distance and quite remotely. And having, I don't know, not so much of a preconceived idea, but very little touch of Krishna consciousness, means of the devotees, and not of Srila Prabhupada at all. And in, you can say, some remote corners of the world, more remote perhaps even than California, then we came across Srila Prabhupada's book, and from one book, which for me and for many was the science of self-realization. His nature was so self-evident. It was just so unusual and unexpected, because I was only reading the book out of a little bit of boredom, just having a gap of a few days between two contracts, and then there's a book on the shelf and we read it. And really, it was so clear from the teachings recorded there about the nature of the author, the sincerity of the author, how he's telling of things he knows and not of theory. He's telling directly and directly addressing the fools and rascals and this, that, and the uncivilized part of the world. And I understand it's me. You know, he's saying all these things and the descriptions are quite like that. But then also I thought it's really, we've never seen such a clear, honest direction, guidance for how to lead our life, and coming from somebody who's living that guidance. And so our generation, we are very much that evidence. And then for some months, I only have that book. And for some months, we are trying to follow according to our very simplistic or simple understanding that's coming from the teachings there. I mean, that's our simple understanding, not Srila Prabhupada's lack there at all. And then step by step, we are trying to follow his direction and coming to meet the devotees, coming to the temple, see the devotees, etc. And then we can say the rest is history. But we do definitely feel, and actually not only feel, we know that Srila Prabhupada brought us, our generation, to Guru Maharaj. And that came through the grace of those devotees who broadcast Srila Prabhupada's hidden message, if you like, because it was something hidden amongst the communities that I was in, at least, of the Krishna consciousness movement. It was a little bit of a hidden message. But then that hidden message that of how Srila Prabhupada considered Srila Sridhar Maharaj to be his Siksha Guru, what to speak of the benefit that others can get from his association. And this way, step by step, getting this introduction to Srila Guru Maharaj and coming to Srila Guru Maharaj's lotus feet and coming to Srila Gurudev's lotus feet, who really did give us the inside mood and feeling and nature of Guru Maharaj and of Srila Prabhupada. And one standout part in the history of Srila Gurudev traveling in the world was when it was they called the Centennial year of Srila Prabhupada. And in California, in the United States, then there was a grand meeting of the leaders and gurus, etc., of the ISKCON mission in America. And I don't know exactly who attended, but there was a list of VIP gurus and leaders of ISKCON coming to honor Srila Prabhupada at a special centennial gathering. And by the grace and influence of Pushta Krishna Prabhu, our dear Pushta Krishna Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada's disciple and senior devotee within ISKCON, then Srila Gurudev was invited as guest of honor. And it was so clear there, this is from what Srila Gurudev himself told, and the devotees told afterwards, because we are in India while Gurudev is in California. And Gurudev said that naturally he wasn't the first person to speak, because they've got Srila Prabhupada's exalted disciples there. And he said, they hand me the itinerary that who will be speaking when, and I'm thinking naturally, what will I say? Because they will have said everything first. But he said, I heard one, then the next, but they're not really saying anything much of substance, except Srila Prabhupada is great, and I am fallen, and we've come and he's rescued us, which is all wonderful. It is indeed the case. But then Srila Gurudev said, at first, I'm thinking, I won't have anything to say. And he was, I don't know, several devotees along the list. And so, but then Gurudev said, when I heard first, then the second, then the third, then he said, when it came to my turn, they hadn't really said anything beyond Srila Prabhupada is great and we as disciples are small. And so it gave an opportunity for Gurudev to chant the glories of Srila Prabhupada. And from that and many instances, we actually also understand that Gurudev knew Srila Prabhupada. The best of everybody means including his disciples who had come to surrender themselves to him, that Srila Prabhupada had known him since long ago in the 1940s, when he came to the mission, in fact. So Gurudev revealed also who is Srila Prabhupada, and Gurudev also composed the pranam mantra to Srila Prabhupada. Many ways, and we've got to have the association, the understanding of Srila Prabhupada through Gurudev, and through whom? Through Guru Maharaj, his Siksha Guru, and this way we see, like, not just because it's our family, but really we see even independently this closeness of Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Gurudev. And this way, our Krishna consciousness life is safely protected. So the Mahananda Madhusudan broken record of shelter of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, and Srila Gurudev. This is a safe place to stay for everyone at all times. And today, a wonderful day, and Maharaj, wonderful hearing and being with you for the class you just gave on Srila Prabhupada, and to be reminded and to hear for the first time one or two of these items, and see also examples of Srila Prabhupada's humility. And when he did get off the ship, he did find what he expected. Forewarned.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, just a few words.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you so much for that. And these prayers that Madhusudan Maharaj just mentioned, they're composed by Srila Gurudev, and I want to conclude with them and to say that we understand that in the part of the world we are, it's early, but his glory, this celebration will be continuing for the next 24 hours, more or less, depending on which part of the world you're in. And so many of the senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they'll get an opportunity to speak at that time. But I wanted to read this from Srila Gurudev, and then we will have the Pushpanjali flower offering as a custom on the disappearance day. So we'll do it twice, but I want to read it now. Just hear as Guru Maharaj said, that usually, and this supports what Srila Madhusudan Maharaj is saying, that the pranam mantram should be written by a qualified disciple, right? But Prabhupada himself knew, like, his disciples were less than qualified, and qualified means knowing Sanskrit, Siddhanta, poetry, these things that would be like the minimum. So he gave some version of the generic Guru Pranam, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, and that was in use. And another, Namaste Saraswati Devam Gaura Vani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Prachtatarine. He humbly composed, like, this will be helpful and useful for them. But ironically, the qualified disciple, because Srila Bhakti Sudhir Goswami Maharaj also considers Swami Maharaja Prabhupada his guru, so he's also in the category of disciple. He's the one who, as Maharaj said, can observe, like, the substance of what he represents, and not to diminish the sentiments expressed by his disciples, but he's looking to, are you going to say something deeply substantial about his qualities, characteristics? And we could say they do from time to time in Vyas Puja offerings, but I don't find anything that compares in terms of quality of substance as what is composed by Srila Bhakti Sudhir Goswami Maharaj and these 4 pranams that he wrote from them. And he took the famous Namo Vishnu Padaya and Prabhupadized it, right? So just listen to this. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Swami Sri Bhakti Vedanta Prabhupadaya Te Namaha. I offer my humble obeisances unto His Divine Grace, A. Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is Krishna's beloved associate and who came down to this plane from Goloka. Taking the order of his guru on his head, he is the Shaktavesh empowered. This is Gur Bhagyam Shirshi Dritva Shaktavesha Swarupine Hare Krishneti Mantrena Paschatya Prachtatarine. Taking the order of his guru on his head, he is the Shaktavesh incarnation of Nityananda Prabhu personified. He distributed the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishneti Mantrena Paschatya Prachtatarine, all over the Eastern and Western world, delivering and uplifting the fallen souls. He is the best of millions. Vishvat Charja Prabharjaya. He is the best of millions of Jagat Gurus because he is the personification of divine mercy. Sri Bhagavata Madhurja Gita Jnana Pradayine. He has distributed the sweet nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam and the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita all over the world. And everything. One of his disciples, Sri Damodar Maharaj, who's a classic, simple-hearted Vaishnava, and Prabhupada would go on these walks and have mock battles with him about science. You know, he'd go, he'd call him scientist. He'd go, scientist? And he'd be in the back and come to the front and he'd go, I say life comes from life, not from matter. That was Prabhupada's like subjective evolution of consciousness. And then they'd have this mock fight. So Sri Damodar Maharaj, to his credit, he thought like, you know, he's always called scientist and this kind, and science is like a dirty word in Prabhupada's book. So he wanted to show like, you know, other things. So he's meeting with Guru Maharaj and telling him how he's building a temple in Manipur, which is where he's from, which is, he looked Asian or Chinese almost. That part of India is very close to China. There's some overlap there. So he is enthusiastically telling Guru Maharaj that he's building a temple there. And he had come to visit, remember the Maharaj of Manipur, they had Anu Mahaprabhu during that period when Vishnu Priya's deity had to go underground. Anyway, so many things. So, but he's telling Guru Maharaj and expects Guru Maharaj, oh, how wonderful, you're, you know, that kind of thing. And Guru Maharaj said, you are not meant for that type of construction. He said, Swami Maharaj wants you to build a temple over the tomb of Darwin. Right. And he would love hearing that. And there's Sri Damodar with Prabhupada on a walk. And sometimes when we're having these wonderful conversations with Guru Maharaj, he would say, perhaps Swami Maharaj is looking down upon us now and smiling on this transaction. Swami Maharaj and our Guru Maharaj, they're watching this and it's giving them great joy. He distributed the sweet nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam and the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita all over the world. He is constantly engaged in exclusive service to devotional service to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Rupa Goswami, and Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. That's Gora Sri Rupa Siddhanta Saraswati Nishevane. Then lastly, next line, Radha Krishna Padamboja Bringaya Guruve Namaha. I offer my humble obeisances under his divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is like a bumblebee, always tasting the nectar of the lotus feet of Sri Radha and Govinda. Jai Srila Prabhupada Tirobhav Mahamahotsavati Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanande. Now we will say these mantras again, offering flowers, then have a little kirtan. Yes. Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale. Today we on disappearance day we Swami Sri Bhakti Vedanta Prabhupadaya Te Namaha Gurvakyam Shirasi Dritva Shaktavesha Swarupine Hare Krishneti Mantrena Paschatya Prastya Karine Vishwacharya Prabharjaya Divya Karunya Murti Sri Bhagavata Madhurya Gita Jnana Pradayini Gaura Sri Rupa Siddhanta Saraswati Nishedini Radha Krishna Padamboja Ringaya Gurave Namaha Jai Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Jirabha Mahamahosavati Ki Jai. I open the Goswami Maharaja ki jai. Jai Goswami Maharaja ki jai. Bhagavan Srila Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Jai Saparikar Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Sundar Guru ki jai. Shri Krishna Balaram Guru ki jai. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness ki jai. Guru Banu Guru Varga ki jai. Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Radha Saraswati Gopasudani ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopasudana Shyamakund Radha Kunda Jini Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. This time, World Headquarters Dandadaya Mandir ki jai. Elegant Dham ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswati ki jai. Gupta Govardhan ki jai. Bangladesh Bhakti Devi ki jai. Jesus, Swami Maharaja Bhakti Ranjan Madhusudan Sannyasi Vrindi ki jai, Seva Vrindi ki jai, Jai Untitled Chapter, Srila Bhakti Ranjan Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Maharaja ki jai. I go to the Swami Maharaja ki
Jai.
And there was this nun in Calcutta, this elderly gentleman, and probably president at the end of the kirtan, who like Srila Prabhupada, whole world, sunshine. And probably, but it's not, yes. We offer our dandavats to Kumkum Dasi. She is one of Srila Prabhupada's senior disciples, Dandavati. Madhusudan Maharaj, Dandavat, Krishna Priya Deity, Dandavat, Namapriya, Dandavat, Sri Lekha Deity, another one of Prabhupada's senior disciples, Sandeep and Maheshwari, Dandavat, Janavi, Hare Krishna, Ni Hao, she's in China, tuning in to this divine broadcast, Hare Krishna. Indumukhi in China as well, right? Yuvati here, perhaps? Jai Srimad Bhakti Sevan Rishikesh Maharaj Janabazia Sachi Sutta Prabhu Dandavat. Okay. Hare Krishna. And Ashapurna Didi Dandavat, Leela Sundar Prabhu Dandavat, Seva Rupa Didi and Dandavat, Praneshwari Didi Dandavat, Purushottam Prabhu Dandavat, Nityananda Das Dandavat, he's here, Sulakshana doing Chinese. Nityananda Das doing Russian translation, Sulakshana Didi doing Chinese translation. Was anyone doing Spanish? Praneshwari Didi, Dandavat in Espanol, Hare Krishna, Sundari Didi, Dandavat, she's in China as well, Harimati Didi in Ukraine, Dandavat, Pavel, Brun, Dandavat, Ekadashi in Tomsk, in Siberia, Dandavat, Sri Krishna Prabhu. He's in, you know, Resigne. Rasananda Prabhu in Kiev, Hare Krishna. Bhakti is right, Dandi Maharaj, Hare Krishna. Right, that's it. So is that everyone? Okay. Our Suchitra Didi, Rakaleka Didi, Ajita Krishna Prabhu, Biroja Didi, Dasana Das always, Anjali, Tungarasa Dandavat, Suleka, Dandavat, Anindita, Dandavat, Banchakalpa Tribhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. And we truly hope that Srila Prabhupada, with Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Saraswati Thakur, and our Guru Varga are smiling down upon this transaction and showering us with their blessings and grace to continue promoting the Krishna consciousness movement as envisioned by them and inspired by them and extended by them. And none of us, not one of us would be here if it were not for the divine grace of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We would know nothing about Krishna consciousness, but we're not for his divine grace, mercifully fulfilling the order of Srila Saraswati Thakur. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, Tirobhab, Mahamahotsavatiti ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande.